Hi, and welcome back. Again, I'm Pastor Eric, and we continue here on day 4 of God's promises, where we're continuing to look at how God protects us from harm and danger. Now, in our first lesson today, in our Bible lesson, which if you haven't watched, as I always say, go back, watch it. We're going to talk about it a little bit here and there. So if you haven't seen it, it's really a good idea to do it. Otherwise, let's keep going. So, in our Bible lesson, we looked at 2 different Bible accounts from the Old Testament book of Daniel. The first was Daniel in the lion's den, where even though Daniel was told that he could only pray to King Darius, he continued to pray to the one true God. And even though he was arrested, you could say, and thrown into the lion's den, God kept him safe there. And then King Darius brought him out the next day and was amazed at what God did for his dear servant Daniel. And then we also saw in Daniel chapter 3 the tale of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, 3 men who were told, bow down and worship this golden image. And if you don't, well, you're going to be thrown into a fiery furnace. And they said no. God will deliver us. So King Nebuchadnezzar threw them in, but God sent an angel to keep Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego safe, and they were brought safely out of the fiery furnace. Before we get into our lesson that we're going to talk about now, I want you to think about the biggest and scariest storm you've been in. What was it like? Was there lightning? Was there thunder? Were you at home? Were you somewhere else? What was the wind like? Could you see the trees shaking? Maybe you were in a vehicle. Some of the worst storms that I can think of that always scared me the most when I was little, I would be in a car. And you'd see the wind beating on all of the windows of the car, and you'd see the lightning flashing all around you, and you'd be really scared because you're not home. There's something about being home that makes you feel safe. Well, as we get into our biblical account today, we see how Jesus and his disciples were kept safe in a really big storm, and they were on a boat. Luke chapter 8, verses 22 to 25 is where we find this biblical account. Now, Jesus and his disciples, they've been traveling around Galilee. Now, the Sea of Galilee it's a really big lake. It's smaller than Lake Huron and Lake Ontario and the Great Lakes, but it's bigger than Chestermere Lake. It would take quite a bit to travel across in a boat. But he said, let's go to the other side of the lake. So he and the 12 disciples all get into this boat, and as they start to set out, well, Jesus falls asleep. Jesus is kind of like me in the sense that as soon as I get into a vehicle that I'm not driving or piloting, I fall asleep. But while they're going across the lake, and while Jesus is still sleeping, a really big storm kicks up. The wind begins to push the waves, and they begin to rage and come against the boat, so much so that they're pushing water into this boat. Now, this is a fishing boat. This isn't a giant cruise ship or yacht. This is more like a rowboat, but it's a bigger rowboat that would fit, 12 to 15 grown men, and they'd have to also be able to catch the fish or carry the fish they would catch and bring it. So it's a big boat, but the fact that water is getting in it means that the storm is really bad and that the disciples are in danger. Now some of the disciples were fishermen, so they'd of course been on the water before, and they'd been in these boats and they'd seen these storms, but this one is so bad it makes them afraid. It actually makes them believe that they are in danger. That would be a really terrifying storm. So they do the one thing that they think they need to do and wake up Jesus, who is still asleep. I don't know about you, but when it rains really loud outside or, the thunder, I wake up. But not Jesus. He is fast asleep in the boat. So they wake him up. Master, Master, we are perishing. Perishing basically means we're getting closer to death. Jesus stands up. He rebukes the waves and the wind, and it all goes calm. It just disappears. The water would go flat. Maybe the sky would break and the clouds would be gone. And he turns to his disciples and says, "Where is your faith?" And then the disciples get scared for a different reason. They're no longer scared because now the storm is gone and the waves and the wind aren't terrifying. But now they're scared because they realize that Jesus has the power to stop the wind and the waves and the things that nobody has control of. Nobody except for Jesus. Jesus can now control the weather around him. He could before, but now he shows it here to his disciples. I want you to think back to yesterday's lesson just a little bit. And in it, Jesus healed a man who couldn't walk for 38 years. And he healed him just by saying, "Get up, take your mat, and walk." He didn't use anything else. He just spoke, and the man was healed. Now here we are, and Jesus is in the midst of this great storm, and the water is coming into the boat. The boat may be sinking a little, and the wind is blowing every which way, and Jesus speaks, and the waves stop, and the wind dies down. Jesus does it again just with his words. That is the power that Jesus has. That is the power that God has in our lives. With just his words, he can do so much. If you want to see another amazing example of this, go right back to the beginning of the Bible. Not the table of contents, you've gone too far. Genesis chapter 1. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. When God had created, he spoke, and it happened. That is incredible power that you and I just can't match. That is something that only God can do. God has all of the power that he can speak and things come into being, or things happen, or people are healed, or the storm dies down. So our memory verse for today continues to remind us of how God continues to protect us. Psalm 50, verse 15. Psalm 50, verse 15. That's in the Old Testament. "Call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you, and you shall glorify me." If you've been to our VBS before in person, or I don't know if Pastor Bodie used this for his opening today, and if he did, that's great. And if he didn't, don't tell him, but you should call him and have him sing it to you. Just saying. But Psalm 50, verse 15, "Call upon me in the day of trouble, and I will deliver you, and you shall glorify me." God is telling us to call on him, and he will deliver us. That is an amazing promise that God gives to us. 2 days ago, when we were talking about prayer, we were talking about different things that we can pray for. We can pray to God when we are in trouble, when we need his help. And he says that he will deliver us. Jesus does the exact same. He continues to protect us in times of danger. Just as he did for Daniel in the lion's den, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace, just as he did for the disciples, as we can continue to look through the Bible and see how all of these different people were protected by God, God does the same for us. He's always with us. He is so much greater than those superheroes that we like and have seen all those movies of, and we'll talk about more tomorrow, I promise. And he's always with us, and he is always protecting us. And he's never asleep at the wheel. He's always right there, keeping us safe. Thanks for again joining me today. Have a great day. Continue maybe to make notes if you like, or continue to look up the Bible passages that we're that we're reading through, and read them through for yourselves. Share them with your parents or your siblings. Thanks for coming again today. Get outside. Have a great time, and we'll see you tomorrow for day 5 here at God's Promises. See ya.